Hello, I am Orwell McGubbins, and I'm here for Right Aligned in conversation with Alice Rotelli. She's a freelance art director currently based in Berlin. Hello, Alice.
Hi, guys. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me here.
Yeah,
As
thanks.
Orwell just mentioned, I'm a freelance art director. I've been doing this for around 3 years. Before, I was working full time, mainly in Berlin, a bit in Italy as well. And yeah, excited to be here.
Nice. Yeah, so I was super interested to chat to you just because of one of the things that you said is that you like to live a life where you have the ability to choose the kind of projects that you do, and you say you work in
Mhm.
super creative work. There's lots of pictures and this kind of thing. Can you tell us a bit about what you do?
Right, sure. After I left my full-time job, I went on and partnered with a creative director, Brigitta Svatsai. She is an amazing creative, and we were lucky enough to kick it off quite soon after we got together. We started working with mainly Amsterdam agencies. We work remotely a lot. And after a few very lucky project with TBWA in Amsterdam for Adidas, we found ourselves 9 months in our first gig looking for some new stuff. And because our strength for sure is and was creative concepting, we started working on quite a few pitches and being called by agencies for a few different pitches. And as you were mentioning, for sure, one of our favorite part of the job compared to full time, where you're sort of like forced, pass me the term, as harsh as it sounds, to work on a certain client and on certain projects, whether you like it or not. The beauty of freelance is you can set for yourself some decent ethical standards, both from what you accept personally and on what the values of the client or agency you're working with are. So we do try. We're extremely privileged to be able to do it, but we try as much as possible to sort of take projects on that have values that we match with clients that have values that we match. That varies from respect for their employees, equality among employees, down to how they treat, how the client, how the brands we work with might treat their workforce, or how sustainable they are or not, and et cetera, et cetera. From the very basic of we don't really work with heavy alcohol and cigarettes, to the more nitty gritty, or where those brands have their production, do they exploit their employees, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah,
Yeah, that's a super privileged position to be in. Um,
absolutely.
have you ever worked with somebody where it's like they've had the face of this kind of thing, but then you found that behind the scenes, it's not quite as it seems.
Yeah, I think especially during my full-time time, we're not going to mention for the politics of things, but I work with a client that wasn't necessarily advertising as the greenest of clients, but for sure had a bit of a fall down that made very clear to everyone that it absolutely wasn't, even
Mhm.
in the slightest, a green client. As for my freelance career, I didn't have any nasty surprises in that term. All the clients we work with were pretty transparent. We had a couple of hiccups with agencies, but who hasn't? If you talk to a freelancer, to be
Uh,
honest, it was all handled with extreme grace when it happened from their side. So no nasty surprises, no bridges cut or anything like that. Again, we were very lucky and privileged on that one as well.
yeah. Actually, I don't know if you've heard, just slightly off topic, something that the EU are bringing in is that all companies that say they're green have to prove it from
Yeah.
the next few years. I think this is actually going to be a wonderful change. Rather than having all this like greenwashing nonsense, you can actually see, all right, well, if they say they're green or they say they're ethical, like this is the standard that they have to live to.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's really nice that in general the work world it's moving towards that place, because there is a lot of greenwashing and in general like equality talking outside of the, like I have many agencies in mind that have posted out beautiful anti-violence pro-equality campaign, and then within the agency I know for a fact by colleagues and friends they do not apply to the employees the same values that they showcase for. So yeah.
Yeah. I guess it's profitable to pretend.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, so how do you find life? So as an art director is like a super interesting position to have. So how
Mhm.
do you find it like as the year flows? Do you tend to have work quite often, or do you tend to like work on something and then it's an interesting project you can engage with, and then you have a bit of a break and then come back? Like, how do you tend to organize your project?
I think I have a bit of an unusual approach to things. Of course, like I can only speak for myself. Because I work mainly remotely, I'm able to travel most of the year. I love traveling, and I'm in Berlin maybe 3, 4 months per year, not longer than that usually. With the fact that I travel so much, and that when I get out of work, be it 5 p.m. or what it may be, I'm usually in a different place, able to explore. On weekends, I can take advantage of the time I have wherever I'm in the world. I feel like I'm generally a bit more recharged than people that would have a couple of weeks, a couple of months, etc., to travel abroad, and they might want to have this time in between gigs to travel and go places. So I think compared to the average freelancer, I take less time off, but that's solely because I work while I travel, and it gives you a bit more of a balance and a breather. And it also allows for, if I finish a gig while I'm somewhere and another gig doesn't happen to sort of manifest itself, I'll get myself a random uncalled for vacation, that it's not spent just at home looking for work, like it happens
Yeah,
many times when you're not working remotely. So yes, I probably take less willingly breaks. It's because the breaks I take, they often happen when I'm traveling anyway, and that's my uncalled for holidays. As for the amount of work, my preference usually, I work mainly with my copywriter as a team. I take some stuff alone as well, but I work way better with her. She's really talented. So our preference is always to take a campaign from the very beginning, so from the concepting phase, which is our strength, and carry it till the launch. So we do the whole thing. We concept for it, we sell it to clients, we do pre-production, production, post-production, the whole thing, beginning to end. And that's usually a good like 9 months gig, depending on how big the campaign is, right? So in my curriculum, you'll find very long gigs. You'll also find, since we got a bit more known for our pitches and our concepting, bets quite a few pitches. Those are usually a 1 month gig, something on these lines. So shorter gigs. And I also do consultation for creative strategy, and I work with brand directly on creative direction, etc. So those are like usually a once a week for a month or this type of stuff. I do some teaching or like workshops here and there, and those are like one-offs. I have to say my preference is for the longer stretches. I like to see the campaigns through,
yeah,
but it can always happen. And as for frequency, again, extremely lucky and privileged. The first 2 years of my career, I think we had gigs going on one after the other without really having to look for them. We were just getting contacted a lot. This past year, as I think everyone in the industry will tell you, was a bit trickier.
Mhm.
It was a lot slower. So it was for sure, except for the first 5 months, which we did at 72 and Samni in Amsterdam. Hi to the beautiful team there. The rest was very much shorter gigs, 1 month, 2 weeks here and there, stuff like that. Because yeah, the industry was going through quite a funk, and the budget was cut really short, so no
Mm.
one could have a freelancer on for longer than a little bit. But hopefully, speaking back up, hopefully next year we get something longer in the books.
Yeah. So do you have any insight into what? Because it looks like you're such a range of like the kind of projects that you're doing and who it is that you're working with. So what is your vibe of like why this has happened? Because it still seems that there is lots of money moving around in design. There's lots of money that's moving around in advertising, but it doesn't seem to be then be coming down to freelancers. So do you have any insight into what's going on there?
It's going to be a superficial insight from my side, because I think it's more of a marketing nuance than it is in advertising. From my understanding, the budget was cut a lot from brands, where instead of investing in growing, they're investing in maintaining and nurturing the base of clients that they have, right? And that means a lot less outreach campaigns for agencies, a lot more smaller projects that arrive in agencies, and a huge budget cut, right?
Yeah.
And freelancers are way more expensive than a full-time person. Of course, take that with a grain of salt. The nice bit about freelancing is, even if you pay someone for 9 months what you would have paid a full-time employee for 3 years,
Yeah.
maybe more, to be completely honest.
Yeah.
You have the liberty to let us go at whatever time. So budget get cuts, you can let us go with 1 day in advance, 1 week, depending on what the contract says, right? I think this year it wasn't just about freelancing. This year was about like a higher freeze in general. A lot of people were let go.
Yeah.
And there was no budget, of course, for freelancer being more expensive than others. So unfortunately, lots of people lost their job. Lots of people got overworked because the company workforce was cut down, and freelancer were coming in when it was extremely necessary,
Mm.
and there was no other choice. And it usually was for shorter bits. So yes, I think it's this like more marketing trend that sort of like snowballed into the agency life of thing. Brand side is going a bit better, meaning clients. I work with more clients directly than with agencies that then had clients of their own. Because um, in brand, like in-house creative departments of brands had a better time than agencies most of the time.
Mm.
But yeah, that would be my explanation. Again, not a marketing person. It's mostly what I've heard running around in the freelance community, and the explanation I got from the context I have in agencies on why. Like I just recently heard from recruiters, "Hey, we had a hiring freeze this year. Sorry if you haven't heard from us. How are you doing in 2024?"
Mm.
So my hope is that things are starting to move. I can see a bit more movement for sure than the rest of the year. This summer was especially dry in terms of like, which I think got me a whole month off while I was away. So I loved it. But I know that again, it was a really privileged place for me to love it and not being like stranded by it. So
Yeah, for sure. Because there's lots of people that I've spoken to as more like in more like junior positions who
mhm.
you're saying there about being reached. They reached out to you to say, "Hey, just how's it going?" Lots of people get like the exact opposite, where they're reaching out but getting that silence.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
kind
I get that a lot as well. It's
it's
not a junior thing.
yeah, it's not all rainbows and beaches.
Yeah, no, no, absolutely. I think it very much depends on like the relationships you have with the different agencies, right? Like because we take longer bookings and we're also like both me and my copy very much people persons. Um, we like to keep contact. We get friends with the people we work with, and so we have a decent line of communication with them. I can tell you that through September, I probably sent, I don't know, at least 30 cold pitches, and I maybe got an answer from like three or four. It's normal. I think it's part, especially if you do cold pitches, which is when you reach out without knowing of a position being open.
Yeah.
It's sort of to be expected. It's nasty, especially when it comes. I think one of the main problems in freelancing is recruiting, like recruiters that come from not from in-house or from agencies, but from recruiting agencies, right? So it's agencies basing their whole practice off of recruiting people. Uh, I understand it must be a hell of a job, but as all jobs that have to do with humans, I think you need to put in consideration that you need to treat humans decently if you want to do that job, right? So the excuse of, but I get a lot of emails, sits not so well with me, because you could literally put on an automatic email in response that like you will only be contacted if, or you know, it's tiny things that make people feel a bit better about it. Because again, some if you're very privileged, if you're very lucky, you can skip the recruiting agency. I hadn't had to go to a recruiting agency up until this year, but I know there are people that start off trying with a recruiting agency, and it makes you feel absolutely hopeless because it's not handled at best most of the time.
Yeah. I think with some people there's this perception that all they do is sit on LinkedIn and they just post to LinkedIn. But it's like it does seem like some recruiters, it's like the job seems to be that you could get a core of people that you like, and then any work that you comes, you can just give it to them. But as long as you like go through the motions of pretending that you're, doing the job, then you can continue to like have this air of being a necessary part of the system.
Yeah, and like respect for the job they do, right? It's a tough one, and on differently than recruiters that are in house. Usually if you're in house, you're looking for someone, you get 30 people to message you, you pick one, that's it. If a recruiters, like, I think one thing people, like especially juniors, don't fully understand is if a recruiter posts a job, a recruiter doesn't often have the exclusivity over that job. So a recruiter got asked to find someone.
Mm.
It's in their best interest to find the people that are the most suitable for that job, because chances are there's three other recruiters or three other recruiting agencies on the same task, and everyone gets, in this year, I would believe is someone within a day got like up to 100 people answering to a post. And
Oh,
that needs to be skimmed through. Yeah, because it's been like there's been a lot of people searching. Like even when I've put up, hey, I'm looking for a designer because I needed someone to be pulled in a project, I was swamped, like swamped. It took me days to answer to everyone. I did it, but it took me days. So respect for what they do. But yes, I don't think lots of people understand that like you messaging them, you're going to be one out of 100 over a week. Out
yeah.
of this 100, they're going to pick three. And out of these three go against other 10. So to be picked, it's a rundown, right? Rather than if you talk to the agency directly, you might have someone against you, but you directly have contact. And it's a way smoother, clear situation to be in. So I think one big message, if we can drop it out there, if you're dealing with recruiting agencies, don't get bummed if you got like no answer or refused or not picked for the 100th time. It's a hard game. Like going through the recruiting agencies is a really hard game to get in.
He's listening. So when we spoke before, you said that one of the things that you actually love doing and being or having the ability to do in your career is like coaching like art director students and like working with like female empowerment groups. Can you tell us a bit about like how you got into that and like the joy I guess that you get from it?
Yeah, sure. I got in really easily at one of the first companies I worked with. I was still a junior. They had this system in where they would get not freelancers, sorry. They would get interns in every 6 months. And they would have a senior, of course, taking care of them. And then they had me and another junior sort of take care of the more superficial bits of it. So handling them, like showing them the city or like helping them with work, helping them see how an agency works, how exactly the role works, et cetera, et cetera. They were people not much younger than us, so it was a really nice vibe, a really nice situation. They could be really honest with us. There wasn't any like hierarchy that felt too heavy to like actually make connection with them. And I realized, even though I had worked not much longer than them in an agency, and they were really highly skilled interns. They came from an advertising school that is one of the best worldwide. So you would expect them to be highly knowledgeable. They had huge knowledge when it came to advertising. They didn't have huge knowledge when it came to agency and how life at an agency works and the politics and how things develop, etc. One thing that I see with a lot of advertising schools is they will train you well on a job that you won't get to do for a few years. And that applies to me as well. I did a master in advertising before getting in. They train you to be an art director. They train you to the task of a midweight, meaning usually it's campaign concepting, et cetera, et cetera. When you're a junior, most of the time you do more of a graphic design slash implementation slash support
Yeah.
sort of work, right? Which can be annoying. In my case, I can tell you, I'm very much of a conceptual one. And at the time, it was a good 7 years ago, so even worse than now. There were many advertising schools. So when I first got into work after a 6 months internship, I was told, you have the skills of a midweight, but I cannot hire an intern as a midweight. You don't have the skill of a graphic designer, because I never studied graphic design.
Yeah.
And so we can't keep you because you're overqualified, but underqualified age-wise. It's very Italian. Like protocol-wise, couldn't skip. Maybe in another country, they would have been like, "Fuck it, you're doing great, let's go."
Yeah.
But yeah, it was Italy, so it didn't work that way. But yes, so I saw sort of like a bit of lack there as I proceeded with my career in that bridges, and that's what the internship is for, right? But the truth is, lots of time, if you expect what you learned in school to be applied in advertising and then you get something completely different, it can be a huge letdown, right? So I saw there a bit of a gap in what was sort of getting taught and what was actually happening at the agency, and also what those people had expectations on, etc. And I started trying to help in that sense. It then sort of naturally went into focusing on the more female side of the issue, just because I saw first-handedly how way less regard females are handed in the advertising industry. and I know lots of people will disagree and will say in 2023 this is redundant. I can promise, if now it's more redundant than it was 5 years ago, 5 years ago in agency was extremely real. And I now work with some of the most open-minded biggest agency in Europe that pride themselves into not being an old school sexist environment. And I still see sometimes some issues. So you can imagine what an agency that is just not as out there, which is 90% of the agencies, because not all of them like subscribe to any of this, can foster in terms of like a climate in the agency, right? I saw in general that, and this is not necessarily the agency fault, all the female people had a harder time sort of asking for raises, for like questions, problem that they had, advocating for themselves, etc. In a way of like that I saw. How do I explain this? It was a very different matter than the male counterpart. When it came to interns, especially and juniors after, when I proceeded in my career, it was the males might be a bit afraid on what the agency's budget was, etc., if there was even space, if they were qualified enough, etc. But they pretty much knew what they were worth, and they didn't mind asking if they know that there was a chance of getting it. While with the females, it was way more of like, do I even deserve this? Which is tragic because they absolutely did deserve all of it.
Yeah.
But it's a very different shift. And I think it's a shift in mind that is also very much fostered by the agents and how they treat females versus males. Because even in people that you could see it was very much unconscious biases. Because I know I've met people in my career that I know are absolutely they're lovely humans. They wouldn't discriminate on purpose ever, but you can see the different ways they would treat a female or a male intern while going at it. So yes, like I saw a very big need. I didn't act on it as much when I was full-time, because again, it's full-time. You can only decide for your time to an extent. But once I went freelance, I started working a bit more. It was mainly volunteer work and something with schools that wasn't, it was like workshops and stuff like that. I started working to try and sort of educate, not as much about creativity, because that anyone else can teach as much as I can. Like the schools are doing an amazing job, but about how to sort of find your place, find your voice the problems. I've seen situations where I found interns like in tears because they were served a very sexist comment. And even if those were like absolutely your today's empowered women, were in the bathroom crying because they didn't want to create a problem, right?
Yeah.
So there is still, even with the people that very much advocate for this thing, then an unconscious bias internally that will stop them when something happens. And I know as a junior, I was guilty of that 100% as well, because I've been through like quite nasty situation, especially as an intern when I was still in Italy, that at the time I didn't have, I don't know if I want to call it the guts, but like just the courage to bring up as an issue, and I sort of brush it off because that happened. It was a joke. It was a yada yada, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, you say that they don't want to cause a problem, but it's like the problem was caused by the person that made them cry.
Exactly.
And it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, they're there saying, oh no, I don't want to. Yeah, it's like you don't want to be punished for standing up for yourself, I guess.
I feel like it almost goes even beyond that, because I sometimes, of course, you're afraid of being punished. I think sometimes it's I don't like the one thing that I would hope in today's society is you don't get punished for reporting something bad happening,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
But I think that the fear is most of the time those things come from people way higher up than you are. And the potential of creating problems for someone higher up that has some sort of say on your career later on, or if you create troubles for people that are higher up than you, does it compromise your chance of success in the future? Does it compromise in any way, shape, or form? Is it a dangerous allegation to make if you have no proof? Is it, you know? So I think that those are like very big deterrent, where if the same thing had happened from a peer, not that it would have been better, but it would have changed the dynamic a lot. Because again, after this situation, this girl that went through this horrible, I'm gonna call it a comment, and I'm really downplaying it, okay?
Okay.
She had this comment made. Me and another colleague found were in the bathroom crying. She was like, I don't want to create any problems. We're like, absolutely not. We went to talk to the HR because she didn't feel like doing it. She gave us permission to do so. We went to the HR and we were really forceful about like how we were feeling about it and what should be done, et cetera, et cetera. And the HR talked to this person that had made this comment, and this person showed up in front of this girl in the middle of the office, said sorry out loud, and left without any concept or anything. And that for them was the thing was acknowledged, right? I'm not going to say everyone in an agency today would like act like that, but I've heard horror stories way worse than this one, way worse. And sometimes,
sorry, Karen.
no, it's like sometimes it's just like it's like this, and if I want a job here, I need to put up with this. Like I've heard female in the industry say, I've sort of, the way I present myself at work is a bit more like of a shark, a bit more of like a strong head down, etc. Because then I know those things won't happen to me. And it's awful that you even have to like start to plan how to act and how to interact with people and how to present yourself at work to protect yourself from those sort of behaviors in your situation, because you do want to stay in that big agency, you do want to stay in that big industry, you do want to keep that big client, and the only way to do it is to put up with this type of stuff. And there are people that are going to say, but you could change agency, you could change. It's true, but sacrificing your career because someone is being inappropriate, like, it's a tough choice to make. It's something people have worked their whole life towards. They went to school for it. They're working really hard, etc. And though I do believe that your mental health and your safety comes first, it's a tough call to make. So, yeah.
Yeah. Fuck. So with this kind of thing, like clearly when this woman's felt supported, like you together have gone and tried to deal with the situation. It seems like in a lot of these kind of situations, like as you're saying about being an individual in your career trying to achieve something, that's it. We're isolated. We might be in an agency, we might be like do like whatever situation we're in, but it's like you are isolated because if you speak up and nobody comes with you, like nobody also stands up, then you're a lone voice. Is this maybe a sign that we need more unionization in like creative industries where like juniors and people that don't have the power actually do have the collectivization where we're able to support each other, that these assholes can't just do whatever they like and then go, oh sorry, and pretend that that's it done.
Yeah, I think unionization would be great also because if like this is a different perspective on it, but I think advertising, it's one of, I'm not going to say the few, but for sure within the minority of industry where like extra time is expected, is not paid for, is not like, I remember especially in Italy where there is this culture of work. There was this thing that your work would be from 9 to 6. But if you left before like 6:37, you did a half day. You were part-time that day, right? The pay doesn't adapt to it. Like it's not like, oh, another job would pay you less, this pays you more. It accounts for the extra hour. It doesn't work like that in the slightest. And though it's a bit better abroad, there is still very much this thing with full-time that you're expected. Like you need to work nights, you're working nights. No one is paying you for that. Well, in other industry, it doesn't work like that, absolutely. The nice thing about freelancing is that you have a bit more game with that. So when I usually get a gig, depending on who it is, if it's a long-time clients, we can adjust and accommodate. But we do make very clear that if you need me to work weekends, my rate goes up. If you need me to work, I think we include something like 1 extra hour of work for free. If we do more than 3 extra hour work, we charge hourly for those extra hours of work, and so on and so forth. So you can then adjust to your own things. There are agencies that won't put up with it. Again, a very privileged place to be, to even just like have a rate and not have people try to like bring it down, not having to sort of like do whatever. There's people like the ideal way this would work, it would be that you have, sorry, I'm sidetracking. We'll go back to
Go
this
for it.
later.
This is excellent. This is a very interesting conversation.
The way it would work ideally is that you booked for 10 days, it means from the day you book me, I count 10 days. It doesn't matter if you use me or not. I lock that time for you. I'm not taking other jobs. You use
Yeah.
me for these 10 days, right? What ends up often happening is they then, after 10 days, you're like, hey, you used up my time. Do you need me for longer? And they're like, oh, but you didn't work on Tuesday because I didn't give you feedback. And I'm like, yes, but that is not an issue for me. It's an issue for you.
Yeah.
You can try at the beginning and tell me, I'll need you 10 days scattered in the next 3 weeks. Would you be up for that? And if I say yes, then it's a me problem and we'll adjust to it. But if
Yeah.
you book me for 10 days with a date stamp on it, you're not booking me for the hours I work. You're booking me for the time you want me available for work.
Yeah.
I think that's a thing that lots of smaller brands especially have a hard time seeing. And it's a thing that lots of people have a hard time having agencies and brand live up to because they like to be sneaky. They like to save some cash. People
Yeah.
need work, especially juniors, and they go for it. So yeah. And back to your unions, yes, absolutely. I think for all of these reasons, and also for the abuse that can go on, which is not only female related. Like I'm
Yeah. Of course.
let's be very honest. This of course goes on for any people that are non-binary, for men as well, like all sorts of things. But female seems to be especially subject to this sort of abuse. Unionization could help. I think the fear goes a bit beyond. Unionization could do a huge leverage. There is still a lot of it that has to do with culture. Because if I'm being honest, when that thing happened where I was working, I expect for it to be handled so much better.
Yeah.
Like the agency was an agency that promised better and that showed decent handling of things up until that moment. I trusted the HR person. She was like quite a hands-on person, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not going to go into the politics. There were things complicating this situation because of relationships inside the agencies, et cetera. But I didn't expect it to go this way. And even places that you didn't expect to go that way ended up going this way, right? Which meant the fear of the next time it happens, I would hope and expect that X agency does better. But at this point, what do I know? So I think it's also the doubt of, even if you foster like a place with the union, with whatever not, that sort of like helps resolve this type of thing. I think women in general have this underlying fear of, is this just fluff or is this real? If I talk about it, is it going to be a problem? Is it not? And it comes through like culture in general more than to specific agencies, I believe. Because the truth is, I might go, like it might happen to me tomorrow. I might go to an agency that handles it beautifully or tragically, and I would not be able to know as of right now. Like I found out about agencies that in my head were top notch, amazing places, that you learn the CD is someone that has done horrible things, and you wouldn't know. You
Yeah.
wouldn't know. So you really, like, there is no clarity over it because everyone likes to pretend that it's butterflies and rainbows. So I think that's another big part, is the fact that you cannot really trust the ethos or values that you get pushed in front of, because at the end of the day, yeah, they don't have to show for it.
Yeah. It's marketing.
Yeah.
But I think you touched on a point there, like the if there were like unions for people who like in our situations where it deals with it after the fact, like it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
actually fix the problem, and you're totally right about the culture there. Yeah, the stuff with the HRs, I think I learned quite quick in work that HR isn't there to help you; it's there to protect the company from you. Like it's you.
The It's true. I'm also going to be honest. I did meet some amazing HRs out there that did a great deal of help. I can think of one in particular where I was about to leave the company I was working at, and then Corona hit. And this person told me, hey, I haven't submitted your papers yet. If you want to stay, you can stay. That wasn't the best. Like, like there
Yeah.
are nice people out there, even though HR gets a really bad rep. And I'm not gonna lie, like my horror stories are more than my good stories, but there are great people out there uh, that care about the humans. But yeah, the truth is, even if they care, they're responding to someone, and that someone needs to care because they only have so much power, right? So I think that it's the issue when it comes to protecting the employees and what HR or operation manager, et cetera, can do. even the best person reports to someone else, and that someone else is the one making the decision, so they do the absolute best they can. I've seen I've seen one of the best operation manager, office manager, that I work with. Like truly, she was a mom for all of us. She protected us as much as we could. When a director came in that wasn't really supportive of being so forthcoming with employees, uh, she tried to fight it, and then she had to leave. So there is really only so much as people can do, and I think to an extent it's not super fair to put it on them, because they, like, what they're doing is dealing with the relationship part of things. They're not the decision makers with these things.
Yeah, yeah,
So they get a bad rep, but it's not entirely on them, I would say.
yeah.
I wouldn't think I would ever sit in an interview and defend HR, but here we are.
Um, yeah, I think there's actually been a theme through the various different things that we've been talking about. If the industry cared about the people, then the
Hmm.
industry would be much better. So from the work, the way the whole thing works, to the ethos of companies and the culture and that kind of thing, to time off, to payment, to all this kind of stuff. Um,
Yeah,
like if they
I
actually that was the important thing rather than shit, we need money, like, or we
I
need
think
ethos or whatever.
I think the agency can easily pretend that they care about people,
Hmm.
because there is this like very family, like agencies, like big agencies, especially all over Europe. There is a handful of people. It's all the same people. It's all the 1,000. It's always us. Like I know all of that. I feel like I know a person in each agency, because at one point they work in an agency I was working at, and they're like all just driving around. So it's really easy for the agency to pretend they care about the people. The truth is they care about what work those people can do. But it's way easier, because in the creative industry it's not numbers, right? So it's not that someone can stop being productive in a way. If you're a good creative and you push out good ideas, you'll stay a good creative at the end. It's not that if the sale goes down, someone is going to come for you or something like that. As long as you handle your work well and you're creative, you've done your part. And they
Mhm.
can pretend they care about you and you as a person rather than your work. That is not the case, because I was mentioning before, I've seen people that are awful, and like the agency knows about it, the directory knows about it, but they do such good work that they're willing to close an eye on it.
Yeah, yes. I recently read there was a New Yorker article about Adidas and the all the nonsense that's been going on with them, which shows that for a
Hmm.
decade they've got one of what sounds like one of the worst people ever to work with, and they just. I'm not going to mention his name. You can look it up online. It's very obvious. Um, yeah, you're spot on. It's that's the sucky part about it, I guess, is that this is it. Well, they do good stuff.
Yeah,
Like they bring us in good money. Like give good ideas. So just shut up and you're gonna have to deal with them.
yeah, that's sort of it. That's again the nice part about freelancing. It's sort of being able to jump off if you see something like this take place, or distance yourself. And yeah.
Yeah. Um. That's so. I was thinking as we were going through there, like you're saying about you're in a very privileged position, that kind of thing. But you've put yourself in this position, and actually, it seems like it's part of it is maybe a reaction to these kind of situations. It's like if you
Yeah,
are able to get out of the system and have a lot more control out of it over how you engage with it, why would a person not?
absolutely. That's a huge part of why I'm like, truth be told, when I first went freelance, it was because I wanted to transition. I was living in Berlin, still am. I wanted to move to Amsterdam, and it was during Corona time. I knew that positions weren't open. I wanted to go in as a freelance, because I knew that lots of times when you go in as a freelance, if they like you, they'll keep you. And that seemed an easier way in for me. So I started freelancing because of that. Funny enough, got a gig at an agency that I really wanted to work at. And funny enough, 2 months later, they did offer a full time position, which by the time I refused because I loved freelancing so much and the freedom that came with it. But again, it's extremely privileged, like especially at this year.
Mhm.
Anyone that started freelancing had such a hard time. I felt horrible because I'm a big advocate of freelance work.
Mhm.
I You can ask colleagues and friends. I would tell anyone, go freelance. It's great. It's a great life. It's a great balance. You have power. It's great. If you went freelance this year, I can bet you for 90% of people, it wasn't that great, which I
Yeah.
felt extremely guilty for. uh, I think, again, as always in the industry, what goes around comes around. Like things will get back in shape, etc. And I think within freelancing, there is a part of you that needs to be at peace with the ever-changing things, the adapting, the shifting what you do, the offering more things, which touches back to what you mentioned before. I do quite a few things. I do art direction, I do consultancy, I do some teaching and some work with schools, etc. You need to sort of be as polyadic as possible. If you do one thing with a freelance word, it won't last.
Yeah.
There is for sure people that have been doing the same thing for 15 years and now that's their specialty. But especially if you're just getting into it, you like it's good to focus on one thing, but it's also, as much as you get the chance while you're going down the road of freelancing, take opportunities in different stream of both money and work and yeah, all this type of stuff. It's for sure it's necessary, I would say, because yeah, see things with AI, etc. Things are changing constantly. If you don't keep up to date with the trends, with everything, you'll get left behind.
Hmm. Yeah, for sure. I think also part of that, just to like add on to that, is it's about your sense of self. Like being a
Mhm.
freelancer is, yeah, you can open yourself up to so many different things. If you get yourself stuck into, okay, this is what I do, then and that's what you believe, it becomes harder to break out of that. Whereas if you approach it with, like you've said, this openness to ideas, to the world, to ways you can help and contribute, and the people you can engage with, that's the way you get an interesting life as a freelancer.
Yeah, I think it's like funny enough, it's very polarizing. It's one way or the other. There's people that do one thing that it's so specific that they will get called each and every time for that one thing. I have a friend who's an illustrator. She only does patterns. That's all she does. And she has plenty of clients. She does that. Of course, in my opinion, it is a bit more dangerous, if you wish, because if from tomorrow AI takes over, if from tomorrow they find someone that is cheaper than you, you're easily replaceable. But usually it's either like the hyper focus on one thing where you're so good at it you'll get famous for it, or the being a bit more polyedric usually helps. I still have like art direction, it's my main stream of work. I focus a lot on everything related, equality related. Most of our campaigns are within that realm. I do other things. I do set design. I do some teaching here and there, workshops
Yeah.
and stuff. I do the strategy. I like, those places.
Yeah.
And I think it's for the best. I also think, to go back to the privilege we were talking about, you need to have privilege to even just jump into freelancing and into the unknown for a little bit. And I also think because it is a more stressful way of living than your full time, where you know exactly what's going to go on the other day, it also take a specific type of person that sorry, it takes a specific type of person that is okay and can deal with this type, I don't want to call it stress, but challenge, let's
Yeah.
say.
Yeah.
So one thing that I would flesh out there, if you're the type of person that uncertainty or like ever changing or the motion of things stresses you out, as much as freelance might seem this holy grail oasis of joy, it's not for everyone.
Mm.
It is like, if I have a friend who went freelance last year, and every time she'd be in a gig, even for like a couple of months, she'd be like, "Well, I need to look for something for after. What happens after?" If you leave it that way, freelance is not for you.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, mental
Um,
health wise, I think it brings lots of positive, but you need to be cut for it, or it brings lots of negatives as well.
yeah, but the longer I do it, the more I admire the people that are willing to get up every day, go to work at 9, go home at 6, or even do like
Hmm.
weirder hours than that. Because that to me seems like the real stress. That to me seems like the real, like, I wouldn't want to do that at all. So I have like a big admiration for people that do that kind of work, because I know that if I did it, it just wouldn't make me happy.
Oh no, absolutely. And it's a very much what floats your boat vibe. There are people that would see my life as a living nightmare, like having to look for a different job and a different gig every 2 months. Like they would never. To
Yeah.
me, it's the same as you. Like the 9 to 5 absolutely kills me. I can't. I can't. I remember the very first full time job I had. I mean, it wasn't even a job; it was an internship at the time. But like 3 months in, I had a full on like existential crisis, because I was like, I'm going to do this for 60 years. Like, this is my life now. you know. I didn't know, like at the time I was an intern in Italy, I had no idea freelancing was even something. Like in Italy, freelancing, because it doesn't pay incredibly well and it's really like people take a lot of advantage. There's lots of people that are on contracts, on freelance contracts for a pay that would be a full-time pay. So
Mm,
it's like it's not absolutely a thing that you would like look forward. Everyone would look forward something that it's more stable. I didn't
mm,
grow up with the idea, oh, you can be an entrepreneur, you can go freelance, you can do whatever. So to me at that point, I got out of school and in 3 months I was like, this is life forever. This is life till I'm old. And it
scary.
crushed me. It crushed me, man. But yes, to each your own. Some people like having the same people, the same routine, the
Mm,
same like set goals, knowing how things are gonna go, and then they like to thrive in everything outside of work, right?
mm,
I it's not for me, but again, luckily we're all different and to each their own.
yeah. Yeah, I can totally 100% relate to that. This conversation has been absolutely wonderful, super engaging. Before I let you
Glad to
go,
be here.
tell me or tell us, how is it you keep yourself happy in your work?
Uh, Having a partner is huge for me. I would be way less happy if I worked by myself and not with a partner, because of course, as you know, freelancing, it's you change a lot. You don't have the same colleague base you would have usually. So my partner for sure keeps me very happy. The ability to pick the projects most of the time, of course, that I work on, the ability of just having creative freedom over this thing, and also the freedom outside of work that working freelance gives you. It's huge for me. I'm very much a restless person. I cannot stay in one place for long. I've been traveling almost nonstop for 3 years, and I couldn't do it most probably with a full-time job. So that's something that it's a huge plus for me.
Amazing. Alice, thank you so much.
Thank
This has been
you.
wonderful. So, do you want to just tell us where people can find out more about you online?
Sure. Quite straightforward. It's alicerotelli.com. It's my website. You'll find also both my work and me and my copywriter work. Otherwise, you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm always happy to help anyone that needs some guidance in the industry. I love to help young people and not young people sort of, yeah, just thrive and have a good time and learn how to sort of fend for themselves in a bit of a nasty industry
Amazing.
that we picked for ourselves. So yeah, feel free to reach out anyone.
Excellent. Thanks so much. Thanks for watching and see you on the next one.